There are moments in life when you feel as though everything around you is stable, predictable, and even comfortable, yet deep down something inside of you just won't rest. You may look at your job, your finances, your routine, and on the surface it appears fine, but there's an uneasiness that won't let you settle. That restlessness is not something to be ignored, because often it is God Himself stirring within you, signaling that He has prepared a greater level of provision and purpose. He doesn't want you to remain stuck in what is simply good when He has destined you for something much greater. That holy dissatisfaction is one of the clearest signs that you are being prepared for wealth and abundance. Not the kind of wealth that is empty or selfish, but the kind that elevates you to a place where you can fulfill your assignment and bless others. When you feel unsettled, it is often because your spirit is sensing a shift that your mind has not yet fully grasped. God begins to push you out of comfort zones so that you cannot stay where you are. It is like a bird in a nest. As long as the nest feels soft and safe, the bird will never spread its wings. But when the nest becomes uncomfortable, that discomfort is actually a push into flight. You may have noticed that certain routines that once satisfied you no longer bring you peace. The job you once celebrated now feels like a cage. The salary that once seemed enough no longer provides contentment. These are not signs of ingratitude, they are spiritual signals. God uses these moments to awaken the desire for more vision, more faith, more capacity, and yes, more resources. Because if you can stay satisfied with less, you will never reach for the more that He has prepared. Think about the great shifts in your own life. They rarely happened when you were completely comfortable. It was usually when something began to irritate your spirit, when you could not shake the thought that there was something greater calling you. That inner stirring is the Spirit of God nudging you out of the ordinary so you can step into the extraordinary. Too many people mistake this stirring for frustration or even failure, when in reality it is divine preparation. When God wants to lead you into wealth, He often starts by disturbing your peace with the level you are on. You start to feel that what once was acceptable is no longer enough. That is not greed, it is growth. That is not pride, it is progress. You see, God cannot increase what you are willing to settle with. If you remain satisfied in smallness, you will never discover the greatness that has already been assigned to your life. This restlessness does not mean you despise what you have. On the contrary, it means you are thankful for where you are, but aware that there is another dimension waiting. It means you can honor the present while being drawn to the future. That tension is divine because it keeps you pressing forward rather than sitting still. The Bible says that God gives us the desires of our heart. Sometimes that desire is not yet materialized, but it begins as a divine discontent, an ache for more, a longing that refuses to leave. And here's the key: the enemy will try to convince you that your restlessness is a problem, that something is wrong with you, that you should just be content and stop dreaming. But God whispers in that moment, I placed that desire in you. I am the one pulling you forward. Don't silence the signal, follow it. When you understand this, you stop fighting against your restlessness and start interpreting it as a guide. If you are sensing this kind of holy unease in your spirit, you need to recognize that it is not random. It is not because you are ungrateful. It is because you are being called higher. God is showing you that the place where you are is not the place where you will remain. He is preparing you for enlargement, for increase, for a season where you step into the abundance He designed. That inner stirring is one of the greatest signs that wealth is on its way, because it proves that you are no longer willing to live beneath the level of what God has promised you. And if you can discern that, you will not fight the process but embrace it, knowing that the restlessness is simply the doorway to your next level. The reason you cannot settle for less is because God has already destined you for more. One of the clearest ways God begins to lead you into wealth is by planting divine ideas and bringing unusual opportunities across your path. Wealth in God's kingdom doesn't simply fall from the sky. It often begins as a seed, and that seed comes in the form of a thought, an impression, or a vision that you just can't seem to shake. You may find yourself thinking of creative solutions, new business ventures, fresh approaches, or ways to serve others that you never considered before. These are not random. They are whispers of the Spirit, nudging you toward the direction of increase. Many people dismiss these thoughts because they seem too simple, too risky, or too unfamiliar. But throughout history, the greatest breakthroughs were born from ideas that looked ordinary on the surface, yet carried extraordinary potential. When God places an idea inside of you, it may not look like much at first. It could be as small as a concept for a service, a product, a strategy, or even a unique way of managing what you already have. But when that idea is stewarded with faith and diligence, it has the power to multiply into something far greater than you could ever imagine. Sometimes these divine ideas show up when you least expect them. You might be driving, praying, or even facing a problem, and suddenly the thought comes. God often uses challenges as the soil where creative solutions grow. If you are encountering difficulties, pay attention, because within that difficulty could be the very opportunity that leads you into your next level of provision. Joseph, in the midst of Egypt's famine, received divine wisdom on how to store grain, and that wisdom positioned him not just to survive, but to rule. What looked like crisis became the platform for his calling. And it's not only ideas that God gives, but also unusual opportunities. Doors begin to open that you didn't even knock on. People begin to approach you with partnerships, offers, or connections that align with your vision. These moments are not coincidences, they are orchestrations of heaven. God works through people, and when He is leading you into wealth, He will align you with the right people at the right time, often in ways you could never have arranged for yourself. But here's the key: divine ideas and opportunities require discernment and boldness. Not every open door is from God, and not every idea should be pursued. That is why prayer and sensitivity to the Spirit are essential. When it's from God, the idea won't just excite your mind, it will resonate in your spirit. It will align with your values, and even if it stretches you, it will not compromise your character. And when the opportunity is from Him, there will be a peace that comes with it, even if it challenges your comfort zone. Too many people miss their season of increase because they are waiting for something big and dramatic, while God is presenting something small and subtle. Remember, the mustard seed is the smallest of all seeds, yet when planted, it grows into a tree. That small thought that comes to you in prayer, that small opportunity that doesn't look like much right now, could be the very thing that unlocks the future you have been praying for. The question is whether you will recognize it and move on it. God doesn't just want to give you wealth. He wants to make you a steward of ideas that create wealth, not only for yourself but for others. That is why the ideas He gives often have a ripple effect. They bless not just your household, but extend to your community, your church, and generations after you. When you realize that the thoughts God is planting in your heart are not just for your survival, but for His larger purpose, you begin to treat them with reverence. You write them down, you pray over them, and you take steps toward bringing them to life. So if you find yourself lately with an overflow of creative thoughts, if opportunities are showing up that seem unusual yet align with your spirit, take notice. These are not coincidences. They are divine signals that God is preparing you for a new dimension of increase. He is showing you that wealth begins not with what you have in your hand, but with what He plants in your mind and spirit. The reason these divine ideas keep coming to you is because God is leading you into a season where opportunity will collide with preparation, and when you step into it, abundance will follow. There are seasons when everything around you looks uncertain, when the numbers don't add up, when circumstances seem to contradict the promises you've been holding on to. And yet, in the middle of that pressure, something remarkable happens. You sense a confidence rising within you that you can't explain. It's not based on your bank account. It's not anchored in what people are saying, and it doesn't come from what your eyes can see. It is an assurance that somehow, some way, things are going to shift in your favor. That inner confidence is not arrogance. It is the Spirit of God confirming in your heart that you are walking in the direction of His plan for wealth and increase. This kind of confidence can feel strange at first because it contradicts the logic of your situation. Others may look at you and wonder how you can stay so calm, why you can keep dreaming when everything around you screams limitation. But when God is leading you into a new dimension, He often plants that unshakable certainty within you to keep you anchored through the storms. You may not have the evidence yet, but you have the witness inside your spirit. That witness says, don't give up. Don't back down. The promise is closer than you think. Think about how powerful that is. Anyone can be confident when the money is flowing, when opportunities are obvious, when everything is working smoothly. But it takes a different kind of faith to walk with confidence when nothing seems to be working at all. That is why this inner assurance is such a strong sign of God's leading. It shows you that your trust is no longer in what you see, but in who He is. And when your trust shifts like that, you are ready for increase, because true wealth cannot be built on unstable foundations. It has to be built on confidence in God. Sometimes this confidence shows up as a quiet peace. You may still be facing bills, challenges, or delays, but deep down, you are not shaken. There's a calm in your spirit that says, this is temporary. God's provision is on the way. Other times it shows up as boldness. You find yourself making moves, taking steps, saying yes to opportunities, even when others around you think it's too risky. You're not reckless, but you are fearless, because you know that God has already gone ahead of you. This inner confidence doesn't mean you ignore reality. It means you see reality through the lens of God's promise. Abraham looked at his circumstances, his age, his body, Sarah's barrenness, and yet he did not waver in unbelief. Why? Because he was fully persuaded that what God had promised, He was able to perform. That persuasion is what wealth builders in the kingdom carry. They don't wait for proof to believe. They believe until the proof appears. And the enemy knows this. That is why he works overtime to attack your confidence, because if he can shake your assurance, he can stop you from moving forward. He will send doubts, negative voices, even delays to make you question whether what you sense inside is real. But every time you choose to hold on, every time you silence the noise and stand firm, you grow stronger. And that strength is part of the preparation for managing the wealth God is bringing. The beauty of this confidence is that it is contagious. When others see you standing firm, when they notice your calm in crisis, they are drawn to the source of your strength. They may not understand it, but they are impacted by it. And many times, God uses your confidence to open doors, because people trust leaders who radiate assurance even in hard times. Opportunities are often attracted not to talent alone, but to the steady spirit of someone who refuses to be shaken. So if you find yourself with this quiet boldness, this unexplainable peace, this determination to keep moving, even when you can't see the full picture, don't take it lightly. It is one of the strongest signals that God is guiding you into increase. He is training your heart to depend on His voice more than on your circumstances. He is teaching you to walk by faith, not by sight, because the kind of wealth He is bringing requires that you trust Him completely. The reason you feel such inner confidence, even when everything around you looks uncertain, is because God is already preparing you to step into the abundance He has promised. One of the clearest signs that God is leading you into wealth is when He begins to bring new relationships into your life. Connections that you didn't search for, people you couldn't have orchestrated meeting on your own. These are not random encounters, they are divine appointments. God knows that the journey to abundance is never meant to be walked alone. He places certain people in your path because they carry something you need: wisdom, resources, encouragement, opportunities, or even just the ability to see in you what you cannot yet see in yourself. Often, before God takes you into a new season, He brings the right people to walk with you. You might suddenly meet someone who has the exact knowledge you've been praying for, or someone who opens a door you never could have opened on your own. It may feel like coincidence, but it is the orchestration of heaven. The truth is, wealth is not only about money, it is about alignment. When you are aligned with the right voices, the right mentors, and the right partners, your path to increase becomes clearer and smoother. Think about how Joseph's destiny unfolded. He had the gift of interpreting dreams, but he needed the cupbearer to speak his name to Pharaoh. Without that connection, his gift might have remained hidden. In the same way, your gift may be powerful, but it often takes a God-ordained connection to position you where that gift can shine. That's why you can't take lightly the people who suddenly show up in your life in this season. Some of them are not just acquaintances, they are carriers of destiny. Of course, not every new person is meant to walk with you. Discernment is critical. The enemy also sends counterfeits, relationships that drain you instead of lifting you, voices that distract instead of confirming what God has spoken. That is why you must listen carefully in prayer and pay attention to peace. When it's from God, the relationship will not pull you away from your values or your faith. Instead, it will sharpen you, challenge you, and encourage you to step into more. Sometimes these divine relationships won't look impressive at first. They may not be wealthy, influential, or recognized, but they carry keys you need for your next level. A conversation, a simple introduction, a shared idea can shift your trajectory. That is why humility is so important, because if you only look for people who appear to be above you, you may miss the ones God has hidden treasures inside of. Remember, David's brothers overlooked him in the field, but he carried the anointing of a king. Don't judge a divine connection by outward appearance. Judge it by the fruit it produces in your life. Another way God uses these relationships is by enlarging your vision. You may have been thinking small, but when you connect with someone who thinks on a different scale, your faith is stretched. Suddenly you realize that what you thought was impossible is normal for someone else. That shift in perspective is priceless. Wealth often follows vision, and vision often expands through relationships. But here's the challenge: some of the connections God sends will require you to leave behind old ones. You cannot step into the new while clinging to the relationships that are tied to your past mindset. There are people who were right for your last season, but cannot go with you into the next. Holding on to them will only weigh you down. As painful as it may be, part of preparing for wealth is being willing to release relationships that no longer align with where God is taking you. So if you find that lately new people are crossing your path, that doors are opening through conversations, that you are meeting individuals who challenge you to dream bigger and act bolder, take it as a sign. It means heaven is aligning you with what you need for your next level. These are not just friendships, they are partnerships for destiny. And when you honor them, steward them well, and stay sensitive to God's leading, they will become a bridge into the abundance He has already prepared. The reason strategic connections are forming around you is because God is positioning you for the wealth and increase that only the right relationships can unlock. When God is preparing to lead you into wealth, one of the surest signs is that you will go through a season of testing. It may come as delays, as obstacles, as unexpected challenges that seem to stretch you beyond what you thought you could handle. At first, it can feel confusing. Why would God allow difficulty if He is trying to bless you? But if you look closely, you'll realize that these tests are not meant to destroy you. They are meant to prepare you. God is more interested in building your capacity than simply handing you resources, because He knows that if you receive too much too soon, it can crush you instead of elevate you. Every person who has stepped into divine increase has walked through a time of proving. It is in those seasons when doors seem slow to open, when prayers feel unanswered, when you are doing everything you know to do and still waiting, that your character is being shaped. Wealth without maturity can be dangerous. That is why God allows the tests, not to hold back your blessing, but to make sure you are ready to handle it when it comes. Think of it like training. A runner doesn't begin with a marathon. They start small, build endurance, and gradually increase their capacity. In the same way, God uses delays and struggles to build your endurance. He allows you to carry smaller weights, so you will be strong enough to carry greater ones. If you can be faithful when things are tight, you will have the wisdom to steward abundance. If you can keep praising Him when things are slow, you will remain humble when things move quickly. Sometimes these tests come through financial struggles. You might face moments where it feels like resources are drying up, and you wonder if you'll make it through. But those very seasons often teach you discipline, creativity, and reliance on God rather than on money. You learn how to budget, how to value every seed, how to resist waste. And when increase finally comes, those lessons keep you from squandering what you receive. Other times, the tests come through rejection or closed doors. Opportunities you thought were certain may slip through your hands, and it can leave you feeling like you missed your chance. But often, those closed doors are God's protection, keeping you from something that looks good but isn't aligned with His purpose. In hindsight, you realize that the rejection wasn't failure, it was redirection. There are also tests of patience, perhaps the hardest of all. You can see the vision clearly, you feel the stirring in your spirit. You know that wealth is part of your calling, and yet the waiting stretches longer than you imagined. In those moments, impatience can tempt you to force things, to take shortcuts, to compromise your integrity. But if you endure, if you refuse to settle for less than God's timing, that patience produces a strength in you that no amount of money can buy. The truth is, tests reveal the foundation of your faith. Do you trust God only when things are easy, or do you trust Him when everything seems delayed? Do you worship Him only when blessings are visible, or do you honor Him in the silence? These are the questions tests answer. And once your heart is proven, once your faith is refined, you are ready for the abundance without it destroying you. The enemy will try to convince you that these struggles mean you're moving in the wrong direction, that the delay is proof you're forgotten. But in reality, it is often the opposite. The weight of your test is often a reflection of the weight of your calling. The greater the wealth and responsibility ahead, the greater the preparation required. If you can endure the furnace, you will come out pure gold, ready for what God has set aside for you. So if you are facing obstacles right now, if it feels like you are in a season of testing, don't lose heart. This is not punishment, it is preparation. Every delay, every closed door, every struggle is sharpening you for stewardship. It is building in you the faith, patience, and wisdom that abundance requires. The reason you are experiencing unusual tests and delays is because God is preparing your heart and spirit to carry the wealth He has already ordained for your life. One of the most powerful signs that God is leading you into wealth is when your heart begins to shift. You no longer think of increase as something meant only for yourself, but you feel a deep desire to use resources for something bigger than your own needs. There comes a moment when the dream of having more is no longer just about comfort, luxury, or security. It becomes about impact, about purpose, about being a channel through which God can bless others. That inner change is evidence that you are ready to handle true prosperity, because divine wealth is never self-centered. It always has a mission attached to it. When God places this kind of desire in you, you begin to see money differently. It's not just paper or numbers on a screen. It's influence, it's opportunity, it's a tool that can build, restore, and transform lives. You start to imagine how your increase could feed the hungry, educate children, support ministries, or fund projects that bring hope to communities. Instead of asking, "What can I buy for myself?" your spirit begins to ask, "What can I build for God's kingdom?" That shift is crucial because it means you are no longer a reservoir that holds, but a river that flows. And rivers always get replenished. Many people pray for wealth, but their motives remain small. They want enough to live comfortably, maybe to enjoy life without struggle. There's nothing wrong with that, but God's vision is always bigger. He wants to raise up men and women who can be trusted with resources to expand His work on the earth. And the way He tests your readiness is by placing that burning passion in your heart to bless, to give, to make a difference. When you feel that passion growing, it is a sure sign that increase is near. Think of how Abraham was blessed. God promised him not just wealth, but that through him all nations would be blessed. His prosperity wasn't just about cattle and land, it was about influence that carried generational impact. In the same way, when God begins to enlarge your heart, He is preparing you to step into wealth that goes beyond you. It is not simply for your name, but for His name, not only for your comfort, but for the legacy of His kingdom. Sometimes you will notice this shift in very practical ways. Perhaps you find yourself giving more freely than you used to. Even when you don't have much, you feel joy when you help someone else succeed. You start dreaming of ways to create opportunities for others instead of just for yourself. That is God reshaping your perspective, showing you that true prosperity is not measured by how much you keep, but by how much you release into the world. And here is the mystery. The more your heart leans toward using wealth for God's purpose, the more He can trust you with it. Because He knows it won't stop with you, it will flow through you. That is why generosity is not just an act of kindness, it is preparation for stewardship. Every time you give, you are proving to heaven that money will not control you, that your hands are open, that you can be trusted with more. But don't misunderstand, this doesn't mean you are called to neglect your own needs or desires. God is a good Father, and He delights in blessing His children. He wants you to enjoy abundance, to live in freedom, to experience the beauty of what He provides. The difference is that your joy will not come only from what you receive, but from what you release. You will find fulfillment not just in your own abundance, but in the lives touched because of it. So if you are sensing this growing desire in your spirit, if your vision for wealth is becoming less about me and more about we, understand that it is not a coincidence. It is a sign of alignment. God is enlarging your heart so He can enlarge your capacity. He is preparing you to step into a level of abundance that carries eternal purpose. The reason you feel a stronger desire to use wealth for God's kingdom is because He is about to release resources into your hands that will not only change your life, but transform the lives of many others.